Live from Sin City, it's the Socks and Pinstripes Podcast. And now, here's the star of the show, Giant Dr. Griffin!
The AL and NL East. This is Diet Dr. Griffin with another episode of the Socks and Pinstripes Podcast. On today's show, we're going to go through our division rundowns of the AL and NL East. And we're going to start with the National League East, bottom to top as usual. And of course, don't forget, like, rate, subscribe, tell your friends, or your friends' next door neighbor. At the bottom of the NL East, we have the Washington Nationals. This is a rebuilding squad, and there's not a whole lot in the cupboard. And they've also treated Steven Strasburg pretty scummy after his retirement, and then basically forcing him to come and be a part of the team, even though he's physically unable to pitch. And they're basically just trying to get him to settle on the contract that they signed. And, Scott Boras ain't having any of that settlement stuff. He's too busy trying to get contracts for Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery and JD Martinez, all of whom still are unsigned. At the 4-hole, we have the Miami Marlins, and this may come as a surprise because the Marlins did actually make the playoffs last year, but this squad just seems like they've lost a few steps. First off, their ace, Sandy Alcantara, is going to be out for the entire season, recovering from Tommy John surgery. They also lost their best power hitter, Jorge Soler, to the San Francisco Giants as a free agent. And they've already had a number of injuries to the pitching staff, including Braxton Gerrit. And I just get the feeling that this is a team that's just not going to do what it takes to propel themselves from the bottom rungs of the NL East. There's enough pitching there to get them past the Nationals, but there's not much else there. The bullpen could be good, but the lineup is going to be atrocious. At number 3, we have the New York Mets, and these guys have a pretty solid lineup, but there's not much to the rotation at the moment. They are basically biding their time until next season when they're supposed to go guns a-blazing back into the free agent market. But if these guys get off to a hot start and have a playoff chance, Cohen's going to do what it takes to make sure his team gets there and competes, and I think that ultimately will put them over the Marlins, whereas the Marlins probably have a better pitching staff and a weaker lineup, but they're not going to do anything to try and win this year. At number 2, we have the Philadelphia Phillies. They've proven themselves to be one of the best teams in the league year after year. Even though they've been unable to win the division from the Braves, they've been able to make it work in the playoffs. Bryce Harper is back at full health. He was down a bit last year, particularly in the power department, but he turned it on in August and September once he was further away from his Tommy John surgery. And this team is basically the same as it was last year, and they are aggressive and bold and will make moves at the deadline, and I get the feeling these guys are going to make the playoffs again as a wild card. And at number 1, it should come as no shock, the Atlanta Braves. This team's lineup from last year is basically intact. They added Adam Duvall for a song. They traded for Jared Kelenic, who, if he can turn things around, can be a valued asset for that squad. They also managed to get Chris Sale from the Red Sox, and I get the feeling Chris Sale is going to have a tremendous year, and he's only expected to be their number 4 starter. The bullpen's solid. These guys are locked and loaded. I fully expect the Braves to win the division this year. And now to the AL East, or as I like to call it, the AL Beast. This division is the toughest in baseball and has been for some time. Take heed, Dave Roberts. The AL East is where it's at, not your silly little NL West. At the 5 spot, we have the Boston Red Sox. And look, this is a pretty middling team, and it doesn't help that their prime acquisition in free agency, Lucas Giolito, has basically ended the season. They're saying it's an internal brace procedure, but they won't use the Tommy John variety. Basically, it's a different type of item that they put into the ligament to replace it versus a tendon from another part of the body. Apparently has a quicker recovery time of 9 months compared to 12. There's still a lot of work to be done on if that's a realistic timetable, but either way, he's done for the year. The Sox just don't have a whole lot of pitching. The pitching that they have is kind of young and middling. Now, if Andrew Bailey can work his magic, and this was the guy who pretty much brought Kevin Gausman out from obscurity and made Logan Webb the ace that he is. He was also there when Carlos Rodon had his massive 2022 season. If he's able to turn ace-like performances out of guys like Cutter Crawford, Nick Pivetta, Garrett Whitlock, Tanner Houck, and Brian Bello, they may have a shot at having a winning record. I just don't think there's enough to compete in this division, which is loaded. I think the Sox will be sellers by the deadline, particularly of Kenley Jansen and Chris Martin, possibly Nick Pivetta too, since he's going to be a free agent after the season. Also, I think Alex Cora is going to get fired mid-season. At number 4, we have the New York Yankees. And I got to be honest with you, when I was originally doing this exercise, in my head, I had the Yankees winning the division. This is how close I think the teams at the top are in this division. However, when you find out that Gerrit Allen Cole is going to miss the first month of the season and possibly 2 or more with an elbow issue, that's enough for me to abandon ship. Now, if the Yankees go out and they pick up Jordan Montgomery or Blake Snell, I may think that they have an outside chance of making the playoffs. The lineup should be really solid. Juan Soto should have a monster season playing in Yankee Stadium. People sleep on Juan Soto being an amazing player. The reason that he's been bad the past couple of years is that he's been in San Diego and he's struggled to hit above 240 in that ballpark. Last season, he hit 303 on the road. It's a stark difference, and Yankee Stadium is one of the best hitting ballparks for lefties. The real concern with the Yankees is just the rotation, and without that ace at the top, there's not enough to compete in this tough division. The number 3, we have the Tampa Bay Rays, and there is literally no rhyme or reason to why I have the Rays at number 3, other than the fact that the Rays are just going to Ray. They are going to figure out a way to duct tape random players together into a 90-win team. I don't think they're ever going to be good enough to win the World Series, but they just keep doing it. It's this generation's Moneyball. They had a shot at going a little further if they still had Wander Franco, who is, out for discretionary reasons, and no Shane McClanahan, who is one of the top 5 pitchers in all of baseball. He's out with Tommy John surgery as well. In fact, a number of the Rays pitchers are coming back from Tommy John surgery this year. You got Shane Baz, Jeffrey Springs, and Drew Rasmussen, just a lot of guys who will probably be better suited next year. At number 2, we have the Baltimore Orioles. I just get the feeling that even though they added Corbin Burns to the top of the rotation, that this team is going to regress this year. They won 101 games last year, and that is going to be hard to duplicate. There's a lot to like on this team, and I would not be surprised if they advanced further into the playoffs this year than they did last year. At number 1, we have the Toronto Blue Jays. I did not have this coming even as early as today when I still kind of thought the Orioles would be better. The Blue Jays have had a consistently strong squad led by ace Kevin Gausman. They have a balanced pitching staff, a good bullpen, a solid lineup. There's not a lot of holes on this team, but these guys have never been able to really put it all together. And I get the feeling that they might do it this year. They added Justin Turner, and he's a veteran presence on that team that has won it all. And I get the feeling that these guys might do it this year. I know I'm saying feelings a lot and not really having a lot of reason, but sometimes these are coin flip decisions, and you just kind of go with your gut, and whatever your gut tells you, your gut says. Now back to the free agent notes and injury updates. Obviously, we talked about Gerrit Cole already. That was a pretty big one. Another massive injury that just happened was Devin Williams of the Milwaukee Brewers is going to be out 3 months with a spinal issue. The initial doctor reports had the Brewers not being overly concerned about it. And then Devin Williams asked for a second opinion, and now he's out for 3 months. It's pretty interesting there how the Brewers were just happy to let this guy pitch. My guess is that the Brewers were probably going to try to ship him off at the deadline, and I don't see that happening now. The Braves, of course, I think I mentioned earlier, re-signed Adam Duvall for his third stint with the team. He's a consummate outfielder, and I'm sure he'll do pretty well back there. We did have a trade this week. The San Diego Padres acquired Dylan Cease from the White Sox for 4 prospects, including 3 guys in the bottom section of the San Diego Padres prospects list. This is a good move for both sides. Dylan Cease has basically 2 years till free agency. And the White Sox are in a full-on rebuild, so getting rid of their ace and getting some assets is right in the right direction. Now, for the Padres, Dylan Cease lines up probably as their number 3 starter, and this kind of bumps them into potential wild card contenders because Dylan Cease is pretty solid, and they really just addressed one of the major issues they have with this team, and that was their rotation. Now Michael King is expected to be a 4 starter, and this could actually work. I'm not ruling out a wild card bid for this team. These guys are aggressive and bold, and maybe they'll just do this one for David. All in all, this was another quiet week as we get ready for the start of this season. The Dodgers and Padres are on the way to Korea, and they're going to be playing the opening games of the season next week, so that's going to be exciting. We're also having our draft this weekend for the Marty Cordova Invitational, which is always a good time to be had. So I'm going to cut this episode short because I quite frankly need to prepare for the draft this weekend. It's a little bit earlier than usual because of the Korea series, but I got to be ready all the same. So ta-ta, and talk to you next week.